Welcome to Malifaux University. 623. Story Scenario: The Malifaux Masquerade. Mafia is a popular party game that goes by many names. Around Halloween, it is often known as Werewolf, but the principles are the same regardless of the variant. The game is facilitated by a host, and each player gets a card that determines the player's role and gives certain powers and responsibilities. One or more players are the werewolves and choose another player to die each round. Hunters are trying to guess who the werewolves are, and other players are trying to save the slain characters, assist the werewolf, or pursue other goals. This special story scenario brings this fun party game into Malifaux. The Malifaux Masquerade is designed for a group of 3 to 5 players and doesn't use victory points, strategies, or schemes. Like other story scenarios, most of the setup is predetermined and designed specifically for the scenario. If you play the all-out brawl multiplayer format in Gaining Grounds, you will find many elements of the Malifaux Masquerade familiar. You can find the full text for this scenario at the link in the notes below. One player will serve as the host of the masquerade. You may determine who this is randomly, but the game could easily be played several times in an evening, so you might wish to just take turns as host. Each player will have a different agenda determining the win condition for that player. Regardless of who the host is, every player gets to hire just one model for this game, but it cannot be a master model. Henchmen, enforcers, and minions are all fair game. This model counts as your leader for game effects that refer to a crew leader, but the cost is still not considered zero, so don't try to get around the one model each rule. Helping hand for henchmen doesn't work, so don't count on getting an effigy to act like your totem. One model each. Also, summoning, replacing, and burying don't work in this game, so keep that in mind when selecting your model. All models in the Masquerade have an action limit of 2, even though they are all leaders. Sort of. When you're the host, your hired model can cost up to 8 soulstones, but it still cannot be a master model. If there are 5 players, the host's action limit increases to 3. Lastly, the host gets a maximum hand size of 6. All other players are the guests at the Masquerade. Each guest hires a single, non-master model up to 6 soulstones in cost. Maximum hand size for guests is 4 cards. Nothing in this scenario says totems can be hired without their associated masters, so most totem models will be off limits for this game. The only exceptions at the time of this video are Hungering Darkness and Lord Chompybits, who have abilities which remove their totem characteristics when they are selected as crew leaders. At 7 and 8 soulstones respectively, they would be eligible to be host of the Masquerade, but not guests. Regardless of how many players there are, this game ends after 5 turns, just like a regular game of Malifaux. It could end early, though, if a player accomplishes her model's specific goal before the end of the 5th turn. More about this in a minute. The goal of the scenario depends on who you are. The host will remove some cards from his fate deck and randomly distribute them to the guests. These are called costume cards, and the players need to keep the cards a secret from the host and other guests, but also keep the costume cards face down in front of them during the game. In a 3-player game with a host and 2 guests, the host removes the 1 and 2 of tomes, the 1 of crows, the 1 of masks, and the black joker from his fate deck. In a 4 or 5-player game with 3 or 4 guests, the host also removes the 1 of rams. All of these cards stay out of the host's fate deck during the whole game, regardless of how many players there are, and the host player should set the unused cards aside without looking through them and leave them where they will not be mistaken for his control hand or fate deck. All the players have different goals depending on who they are in the Masquerade. The host is trying to reveal all the players' costume cards, either with the Guess Who action we'll discuss later, or by killing the guests. When a model is killed, the player reveals its costume card to the rest of the players. In a 4 or 5-player game, there may be a player with a ram card. This player is in the guild and is called the Loyal. If the host wins, the Loyal player wins. If the host is killed, the Loyal reveals this card and immediately becomes the new host. The game continues over the previous host's dead body. Tomes mean Arcanists, also known as the Martyrs. There may be 2 of them, but you still cannot reveal your card to the other guests, so you work independently. The martyr can win in one of two ways, either being killed by the host or the loyal, or by dropping scheme markers near the center point. Crows are for the resurrectionist, or the opportunist. If your model has a crow costume card, you secretly select another guest model before the game. You win if you kill this model, or if you're still alive at the end of the game and your targeted model is not. Masks are for Neverborn, also called the Wrathful. The Wrathful wins if the host is killed. If a player gets the Black Joker, he becomes the Outcast. This player's only goal is to wipe all the other models off the table. Order of setup is particularly important in the Malifaux Masquerade. Once the players have decided who is the host and who are the guests, the host randomly distributes the costume cards from his fate deck. Once the players have and understand their costume cards and their goals, they then hire their models. Though there are clearly certain factions associated with each suit of the costume cards, a player is not restricted to hiring a model within that card's faction. If you get a Neverborn costume card making you the Wrathful, you can still hire a Ten Thunders, Explorer Society, Resurrectionist, or whatever other model you want. Of course, you can still hire a Neverborn model too, if that's what you want to do. Once hired, the players reveal their hired models when they deploy them. This scenario doesn't use any of the regular deployment zones. The host deploys on the center point. Then, each guest flips for deployment. Whoever flips highest chooses a quarter of the table and deploys in that quarter 10 inches away from the host. Not at least 10 inches away or within 10 inches of the host, but 10 inches away from the host. The guest who flipped next highest then selects a quarter and deploys, as long as no two players are deployed in the same quarter, and so on through the guests. Players may deploy anywhere in that quarter along that 10-inch arc away from the host, but must be completely inside their own table quarters. No straddling two quarters. Since the opportunist player, if any player gets the one of crows, will have to write down another model's name before the game, every player should have a piece of paper and write down a model's name before the game to prevent the opportunist from being identified before the game even begins, or revealing that there is no opportunist model on the table. It will also be handy for the host to use a notepad to keep track of activation sequence due to the scenario's unique initiative rule. When flipping for initiative in the start phase of each turn, all players flip. Whoever has the highest card will go first, then the next highest card, and so on. If any players are tied, those players then reflip to break the ties among those players. For example, in a 5-player game, the initiative flips are 10, 2, 4, 4, and 8. Player A will go first, player E will go second, and player B will go fifth. Players C and D need to reflip to break their tie. C flips an 11, and D flips a 1. C will go third, and D will go fourth, despite their new cards being higher and lower than other players' cards, since they were reflipping just to break the tie. The scenario doesn't say you cannot cheat this initiative flip, but it will take precious cards and time to do so. It's up to you to decide before the game if you'll allow cheating initiative or not, and to figure out how best to do it. Once the activation order is determined through these initiative flips, the host should write it down, since paper never forgets. Remember that the host gets a leader's 3 action limit only in a 5-player game. Regardless of how many players there are, though, the host gains the Guess Who ranged attack, which has a resistance stat, so is an attack action by definition, and can be affected by other game effects that refer to attack actions. With Guess Who, the host can target a model with a secret costume card within 6 inches. That model resists with willpower. Guess Who comes with a stat of 5, and if the host wins the duel, he gets to guess the costume of the targeted guest. If the host guesses correctly, the guest flips the costume card over, revealing it for the rest of the game. Additionally, the host heals too. Note that the host cannot target the same guest more than once per activation. An extra perk of being the host occurs during the end phase of each turn. The host may take the Guess Who action again for free, but this time ignoring range and line of sight, targeting any guest model on the table. It still cannot target a model whose costume card has already been revealed, though. Being a special story scenario, each player has unique victory conditions. The game ends after 5 turns regardless. If no one has met the victory conditions of her role, then no one wins. If any player, guest or host, achieves her goal during the game, that player immediately wins. For the host to win, the host must still be alive, and all the guests' costume cards must be revealed, either through the Guess Who action or when they are killed. For the loyal guild to win, the host must win. If the loyal becomes the host during the game, all other players' costume cards must be revealed, and the loyal player must still be alive at the end of the game in order to win. If the loyal player never becomes the new host, then it becomes a shared victory when the host wins. For the martyr arcanists to win, they need to either be killed or to have scheme markers near the center point at the end of the game. If there are 2 martyrs, one can win alone if the host or the loyal player kills the martyr while the martyr's costume card is still secret. Take note that if the loyal's costume card is still secret when he kills a secret martyr, it is on the integrity of the loyal player to reveal his costume card and declare the martyr player the winner. If he allows the game to continue, the other players will eventually discover that they've been wasting their time and the martyr should have already won. A friendly game is an honest game. If the martyrs make it to the end of the game, they can win together by having any combination of 3 or more scheme markers within 4 inches of the center point that are friendly to either or both of the martyr model's real factions. A single martyr may also achieve this end-of-game win condition, especially considering there may be only one of them in the game. The opportunist resurrectionist immediately wins if he kills the guest he secretly chose at the beginning of the game. If he doesn't kill that chosen model, the opportunist still wins if he is alive at the end of the game and the targeted model is not, whether it was killed by another model, a condition, or some other means. For the Wrathful Neverborn to win, the host and his loyal replacement, if any, must be killed. Note that the Wrathful does not have to be the one to kill these hosts. The hosts just need to be killed. The Outcast player's only win condition is being the last model alive on the table. If a single game effect impacts more than one model at a time, such as a blast marker or a pulse, the all-out brawl rules state the effects are resolved in activation or initiative order. Since several of the victory conditions are immediate and contingent on one or more models being killed, be sure to keep this in mind when handling area effects. Let's see this in action. This Malifaux Masquerade has 4 players. They decided randomly who would be the host, and then that player removed all 6 of the costume cards from his fate deck since this is a 4-player game. He mixed them up and passed 1 to each player without knowing who was getting what. He then set the remaining 3 costume cards aside where they wouldn't get mixed up with his fate deck or control hand. He won't use them or look at them for the rest of the game. Now that all the players know what their costume cards are, they each hire a single model and flip for deployment order. There are no ties, and the sequence deploys Iggy, Shoujo, and Maris LaCroix. They each deploy completely within separate quarters, 10 inches away from the host, Klaus Norwood. After deploying, they all secretly write down the name of another model, just in case there is an opportunist among them. Iggy received the Rams card, so he is the loyal. He will try to make sure Klaus wins the game by protecting him from attacks and possibly killing the martyr, if there is one, once the martyr's card is revealed. He needs to be careful not to kill the martyr, if there is one, before the martyr's costume is revealed, or else the martyr will win. It turns out that Shoujo is a martyr, but no one else knows that. She needs to provoke Klaus into killing her before her costume card is revealed. Failing that, she will try to drop 3 scheme markers near the center point by the end of the game. Maris LaCroix received the Crow card, so she is the opportunist. She selected Shoujo before the game as her targeted model, so her one and only goal is to make sure Shoujo dies. If Maris kills her, Maris immediately wins. If Klaus or Iggy kill Shoujo, Maris must survive to the end of the game to claim her victory. After flipping for initiative, it is determined that Shoujo goes first. She walks 5 inches to get within range of her biting insult attack. She succeeds in giving Klaus the distracted condition and gains a pass token since Klaus hasn't activated yet. She casts her slurred speech bonus action successfully, gaining the poison +2 condition and ending her activation. Iggy is next to activate, and he uses his reckless bonus action to suffer 1 damage and give himself the fast condition. He walks twice to close the distance and then charges Shoujo with his Flaming Fury. Cards are flipped, and she winds up with a total of 2 damage and the burning +2 condition from his Blaze trigger. He doesn't know if Shoujo is a Wrathful, Outcast, or Martyr, but she's the only real target he has right now. Klaus Norwood activates now, and all 3 of the guests discard a card due to his Which One Is Real ability. He has 2 guests within range of his Guess Who action, which he casts first on Shoujo, dealing with Distracted in doing so. She wins the duel. When Klaus targets Iggy, the Little Woe cheats to win, but Shoujo wrecks that with her slurred speech aura, discarding her pass token. Iggy fails the duel, and Klaus gets to guess Iggy's costume. Klaus guesses that Iggy is the Opportunist, which is wrong, so Iggy does not reveal his costume card. However, since Iggy lost a willpower duel, Shoujo's red-in-the-face aura gives Iggy poison +1 for good measure. Maris LaCroix is the last to activate. She doesn't know if Iggy attacks Shoujo because he's loyal or if he's the outcast, but Maris's only goal is to kill Shoujo herself. She walks once to get within range, and then uses her Flaming Bottle projectile attack to put a shockwave marker next to Iggy and Shoujo, cheating to hit her target number. Iggy fails his movement duel and suffers 1 damage and gains burning +1. Shoujo beats the duel and suffers no damage. Maris uses her Bombs Away bonus action, discarding 1 of her 2 remaining cards. She saves a 5 in case she needs to cheat to hit her target number, but doesn't need it. She puts a shockwave marker near Klaus, and the other near Iggy and Shoujo. Klaus has a full hand and cheats to win the movement duel. Poor Iggy loses his duel and suffers 2 damage, while Shoujo cheats to beat the duel and escapes the attack's effects. In the end phase, Klaus can't tell who Maris is really trying to kill, so he casts his free Guess Who on her. She fails the duel, and Klaus guesses she is the Opportunist, which is correct. Maris reveals her costume card, but since Klaus is still at full health, he does not heal too. Now everyone knows Maris is trying to kill another guest, but they don't know which one since she keeps using shockwaves. Shoujo takes 1 damage from burning, but ignores the poison due to her high tolerance ability. Iggy, however, isn't so fortunate. He suffers 1 damage from both poison and burning, which is enough to kill him. Iggy drops a corpse marker and flips over his costume card, revealing he was the Loyal. Maris LaCroix does not claim victory, but that doesn't give away anything. The Opportunist must kill the target directly, but since Iggy died from conditions, Maris must live to the end of the game, unless she's targeting Shoujo, which she is. Klaus still doesn't know Shoujo's role. All he knows is that she attacked him, which doesn't say much. But if he can get Shoujo to reveal her costume card in the next turn, he'll immediately win. In turn 2, Shoujo wins initiative again and has to take a calculated risk. Since Iggy's dead, Shoujo knows her chances of being killed by Klaus are slim. She doesn't know if Maris is targeting her or has to wait to the end of the game to win, so Shoujo runs away, hoping to get out of range of Klaus's Guess Who attack and also hoping Maris will kill Klaus instead of her. She walks twice to get behind this building and uses her Boring Conversation bonus action, opting for the private stash trigger, which heals her 2 and increases her poison condition by 1. Maris's Sputtering Exhaust grants her concealment, which all but ruins Klaus's chance of using a ranged attack against her. His only melee attack does no damage, so on his activation, he pursues Shoujo, going around the back of the building in hopes of staying out of range of Maris's shockwave markers. He still doesn't have line of sight to Shoujo, so he ends his activation there. Maris knows if Klaus reveals Shoujo's costume before Maris kills her, Klaus will win, so she goes after the Booze Spirit as well. She walks twice to get Shoujo within range of her Bombs Away bonus action, ultimately doing another 2 damage to Shoujo. In the end phase, Shoujo's poison condition lowers and does nothing, while she suffers another point of damage from burning. Klaus casts Guess Who on Shoujo, and he cheats in the Red Joker to win the duel. He correctly guesses that she is the Martyr. Shoujo reveals her costume, and Klaus claims the victory as the host, with all the guests' costume cards revealed. Let us know in the comments below how your game turns out when you play the Malifaux Masquerade. That's the special story scenario, the Malifaux Masquerade. Pick up a printable set of all the markers and tokens you need to play Malifaux in the Wargames Vault. If you haven't already, join our Patreon for early, ad-free access to all new content, and be sure to visit the Malifaux University gift shop for the latest in Malifaux-themed shirts, hoodies, drinkware, and more. Links are in the notes below. And remember, play friendly games, keep it simple, and have fun.